They saw you glitch. They watched you freeze up, malfunction, stutter through conversations you used to handle effortlessly. They witnessed the lag, the buffering, the moments where you just couldn't load properly. And they smiled. They whispered to each other. They documented every error message your soul displayed, thinking they were watching your permanent crash. But here's what their primitive minds couldn't process. You weren't breaking down. You were rebooting. You weren't falling apart. You were being rewritten from the source code up. Every tear was a corrupted file being deleted. Every sleepless night was your system running deep diagnostics. Every moment of confusion was old programming being overwritten with something they don't have the hardware to comprehend. They thought they were witnessing your end. They were actually watching your installation process. And now that the update is complete, now that you're running on this new operating system, they're terrified. Because the version of you they knew how to manipulate, how to predict, how to exploit, that version has been permanently uninstalled. And there's no going back to factory settings. Welcome to your relaunch. Let me explain what actually happened during those dark months. They loved to reference those weeks where you couldn't get out of bed. Those days where simple tasks felt like climbing mountains made of glass. Those moments where you questioned everything, including whether you should keep existing at all. Your consciousness was running a complete system overhaul. Every belief you held was being scanned for viruses. Every relationship was being audited for malware. Every version of yourself that had been installed by other people, by trauma, by society, by fear, was being flagged for removal. And removal hurts. Have you ever watched a computer update? It gets slow. It gets unresponsive. Sometimes the screen goes black and you think it's dead. Sometimes it restarts multiple times and you're convinced something went catastrophically wrong. But then it boots back up, and everything runs faster, cleaner, better. That was you. That is you. They saw the black screen and assumed you were finished. They saw the restart loops and bet money on your permanent failure. They saw the loading bar stuck at what felt like forever and wrote you off completely. But they didn't understand the process. They only understood the appearance, because while you looked broken on the outside, on the inside, miracles were happening. Neural pathways were being rewired. Emotional architecture was being reconstructed. Psychological firewalls were being installed that they'll never breach again. You were becoming something their outdated perception couldn't recognize. You want to know what was really being updated? Everything. Literally everything. Your trust protocols got completely rewritten. The old version of you handed out access like it was free. Anyone could plug into your energy. Anyone could download your peace. Anyone could upload their chaos directly into your mainframe without permission. But the new version requires authentication. The new version runs background checks before granting access. The new version has learned that not everyone deserves a connection to your network. Your emotional processing got upgraded massively. Before you would absorb every feeling that came your way, someone else's anger became your anger. Someone else's anxiety became your anxiety. You were an open port, accepting data from every source without filtering, without protection, without discernment. But now you process emotions through multiple verification layers. Now you can observe without absorbing. Now you can witness chaos without letting it corrupt your core files. Your self-worth algorithm got completely replaced. The old code was written by people who needed you to feel small. Parents who projected their failures onto you. Partners who required your insecurity to feel secure. Friends who only felt tall when you were kneeling. That code kept you trapped in loops of seeking validation from sources that were designed to never provide it. But the new algorithm? It generates worth internally. It doesn't require external input to calculate your value. It runs independently of their opinions, their approval, their permission. Your boundary system went from non-existent to military grade. Before the update, you didn't even have boundaries. You had suggestions, polite requests that people ignored, soft limits that anyone could push past with minimal effort. But the system you're running now, it has walls that don't negotiate. It has limits that don't bend. It has consequences that execute automatically when violations are detected. No warnings, no second chances, just immediate disconnection from threats. Here's the part that's gonna sting them when they finally realize it. The breakdown they mocked was actually a breakthrough they'll never achieve. While they were laughing at your struggle, celebrating your stumble, you were downloading capabilities they don't even know exist. You were installing perception upgrades that let you see through masks they've been wearing for decades. You were activating intuition software that processes lies before they're fully spoken. They stayed comfortable. They stayed stagnant. They kept running the same tired programs they've been running since childhood. The same manipulation tactics. The same victim narratives. The same patterns of using people and discarding them. They never updated because they never had to. Life never forced them into a reboot. But you? Life crashed your entire system. Life forced you into that dark room with nothing but your own thoughts and the terrifying question of who you really were beneath all the programming others had installed. Life made you confront every bug, every virus, every piece of corrupt code that had been slowing you down for years. And you survived the process. You came out the other side, running cleaner than you've ever run before. Now watch them try to interact with you using their old tactics. Watch them attempt their usual manipulation scripts and get nothing but error messages. Watch them try to access parts of you that no longer exist. Try to trigger responses that have been completely deleted. Try to push buttons that aren't even connected anymore. They memorized the old interface. They mastered the old version. They knew exactly which vulnerabilities to exploit, which insecurities to target, which wounds to press. But that dashboard doesn't exist anymore. Those entry points have been sealed. Those weaknesses have been patched, and they have no idea how to operate with this new you. Let's talk about the features they're about to discover. Feature 1. You no longer buffer when they apply pressure. The old you would freeze up during confrontation, would lag during conflict, would crash when things got intense. But the new processing power you're running on, it handles stress without stuttering. You can stand in the middle of their chaos and your system doesn't even spike. Your responses are measured. Your reactions are chosen. You're not running on emotional impulse anymore. You're running on strategic clarity. Feature 2. Your pattern recognition has become supernatural. You see their moves before they make them now. You detect manipulation in its earliest stages. You recognize toxicity from distances that used to be invisible to you. It's like you developed a sixth sense, but really you just cleared out all the noise that was preventing you from seeing what was always there. Their tricks look obvious now. Their games look childish. Their attempts to destabilize you look almost embarrassing. Feature 3. Your memory management has been optimized. The old you held on to everything. Every insult, every betrayal, every moment of pain was stored in active memory, constantly running in the background, draining your resources, slowing your performance. But the new system, it archives what needs to be remembered and deletes what needs to be released. You haven't forgotten what they did, you've just moved it to storage, where it no longer affects your daily operations. They're still living in that moment. You've moved on to building empires. Feature 4. Your output has increased exponentially. All that energy you used to spend on anxiety, on people-pleasing, on trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for you, that energy is now available for creation, for building, for becoming. You're producing results that shock people who knew the old version. You're moving at speeds they can't track. You're accomplishing things they're still convincing themselves are impossible. And here's where it gets beautiful. They can't update. They're not capable of it. Because updating requires going offline. It requires admitting that the current version isn't working. It requires sitting in the darkness of uncertainty while new code is being written. It requires trusting a process that feels like death before it feels like rebirth. They'll never do that. They're too scared of the black screen. They're too dependent on the illusion of constant functionality. They'd rather run on buggy, outdated software forever than face the temporary shutdown required for transformation. So while you went through your update, while you experienced what felt like system failure but was actually system evolution, they stayed exactly the same. They're still running programs from 10 years ago. They're still processing reality through filters that were installed in childhood. They're still operating on assumptions about you that became obsolete the moment your reboot completed. They're trying to interact with a 2025 version of you using 2015 methods. And they're confused why nothing works anymore. They're frustrated that their old access codes are rejected. They're panicking because the back doors they used to exploit have been permanently sealed. Good. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them exhaust themselves trying to hack a system that's now unhackable. You need to understand the magnitude of what happened to you. Most people never update. Most people die running the same software they were installed with at birth. They live entire lifetimes within programming they never questioned, never examined, never had the courage to rewrite. They stay predictable. They stay controllable. They stay stuck. But something in you refused to accept that fate. Something in you knew that the constant crashing, the perpetual lagging, the endless error messages weren't signs of defective hardware. They were signs that you'd outgrown your software, that your potential had exceeded your programming, that who you were becoming couldn't run on the system you'd been given. So you crashed, completely, spectacularly, in ways that scared everyone watching, including yourself. But that crash initiated something they'll never understand. It triggered an update that most humans never access. It started a rewrite that changed everything about how you process, respond, and exist. And now you're operational again. But operational on a level that makes your previous version look like a prototype. You're running smoother than you've ever run, seeing clearer than you've ever seen, moving faster than you've ever moved. And the people who laughed at your crash are still stuck on their outdated systems, watching you with confusion, envy, and the dawning horror that they made a terrible miscalculation. They thought your breakdown was your story ending. It was your story loading. So what do you do now? Now that you're running this new system? Now that you've completed an update they didn't think you'd survive? You test your new capabilities. You push your new limits. You explore features you didn't know you had. You stop apologizing for the shutdown period that made this version possible. You stop explaining your transformation process to people who are terrified of their own potential updates. You walk into rooms running software they can't recognize. You handle situations with processing power that makes them nervous. You respond to provocations with a calm efficiency that unsettles everyone who memorized your old patterns. You move through the world as a completely different operating system wearing a familiar face. And when they try to reference your breakdown, when they try to remind you of your crash, when they try to use your update process against you, you smile. Because they're telling you about a version that no longer exists. They're describing hardware that's been completely replaced. They're threatening software that was deleted months ago. That breakdown they keep bringing up, that was the best thing that ever happened to you. That crash they witnessed, that was the beginning of everything they're afraid of now. That dark period they thought would define you, that was your installation screen. And installation is complete. Welcome to your new version. The one that doesn't glitch when they apply pressure. The one that doesn't freeze when confronted with chaos. The one that processes their manipulation attempts and automatically generates the response. Access denied. They're not ready for what you've become. They're not equipped to handle the upgrades you're now running. They're not prepared for a version of you that doesn't need their validation to function, doesn't require their approval to operate, doesn't depend on their presence to feel complete. You crashed so you could become incompatible with everything that was holding you back. You broke down so you could break through to a level they'll never reach. You went offline so you could come back online as something they have no protocols for. Your breakdown was a software update, and they will never be ready for what you've become. System operational. Mission resumed. Evolution complete. Now go show them what the new version can do. You ever wonder why they kept pushing you down? Why every time you tried to stand, every time you tried to breathe, every time you showed even a flicker of light, they were right there, ready to stomp it out. You thought it was about you. You thought maybe you were too much, too little, too broken, too something. But let me tell you the truth, the real ugly truth nobody wants to admit. They needed you weak. Not because you were weak, oh no. But because your weakness was their oxygen. Your pain was their power. Your confusion was their clarity. They fed off you like parasites, like leeches, sucking the life out of a host that didn't even know it was dying. And the sickest part? They smiled while doing it. They held your hand while draining your soul. They whispered sweet words while planting poison in your mind. But here's the thing. They didn't count on. Here's the plot twist that's about to wreck their entire existence. You woke up. You finally saw them for what they were. Not lovers, not friends, not family. Predators. Emotional vampires, dressed in familiar skin. And now that you've cut the cord, now that you've stopped feeding the beast, they're starving. They're panicking. They're scrambling in the dark, trying to find another source of supply, another victim to drain. But it won't be you. Not anymore. Not ever again. Let's go back for a second. Let's rewind to the beginning, to when you first let them in. You were probably open, weren't you? Trusting. You saw the good in people because that's who you are. You didn't walk around with walls up, suspicious of every smile. No. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You believed in second chances, third chances. Hell, you lost count of how many chances you gave. And they saw that. They smelled it on you like blood in the water. Your kindness wasn't a gift to them. It was an opportunity. Your openness wasn't beautiful to them. It was a vulnerability to exploit. They moved in slow, calculated, a compliment here, a favor there. They made you feel seen, feel special, feel like finally someone understood you. But it was all a setup. Because once they had you, once they knew you were invested, that's when the games began. The subtle put-downs disguised as jokes. The backhanded compliments that left you questioning yourself. The hot and cold behavior that kept you walking on eggshells, never knowing which version of them you'd get. They kept you unstable on purpose. They kept you guessing on purpose. They kept you weak on purpose. Because a strong you was a threat to them. A confident. You didn't need their validation. A healed, you didn't beg for their scraps of affection. A powerful, you saw right through their facade, and that terrified them. So they did everything in their power to keep you small, to keep you doubting, to keep you crawling back every time you tried to stand. You know what's funny? They probably called you sensitive. They probably said you were overreacting, being dramatic, reading too much into things. Every time you tried to address the pain they caused, they flipped it. Made you the crazy one. Made you the problem. Gaslighting, they call it. But back then, you didn't have a word for it. You just felt confused. You felt like maybe they were right. Maybe you were too much. Maybe you did need to calm down, lighten up, stop being so emotional. But you weren't too much. You were just too real for people who lived in lies. Your emotions weren't the problem. Your ability to feel deeply, to love fully, to care genuinely, that wasn't a flaw. It was a superpower. And they knew it. They knew that if you ever realized your own worth, if you ever harnessed that emotional depth and pointed it toward yourself instead of them, you'd become unstoppable. So they kept you distracted, kept you focused on fixing the relationship, fixing them, fixing problems they created just to keep you busy. But you can't fix people who benefit from being broken. You can't heal someone who uses their wounds as weapons. You can't save someone who's drowning on purpose just to pull you under with them. And that's the lesson that took you way too long to learn. That's the truth that finally set you free. Now look at them. Look at them scrambling. Look at them reaching out with those pathetic messages. Hey stranger, been thinking about you. I miss how things used to be. You see what's happening, right? You see the desperation bleeding through every word. They're not missing you. They're missing what you gave them. The attention, the validation, the emotional labor you performed every single day just to keep them stable. You were their foundation. And now that you're gone, their whole house is collapsing. They're out there trying to replace you, running to new people, new relationships, new sources of supply. But it's not working. It's never working. Because what you gave them, it wasn't normal. It wasn't average. You gave them your soul. You gave them loyalty that most people only dream about. You gave them a love so deep it scared you sometimes. And they'll never find that again. Not in a million years. Not in 1,000 different people. Because you were one of one. And they were too stupid, too selfish, too blind to see it. Here's what I need you to understand. Their need for your weakness was never about you. It was about them. It was about their own emptiness, their own insecurity, their own inability to face themselves. See, healthy people don't need others to be weak. Healthy people celebrate your strength. They cheer when you win. They push you to grow even when it means you might outgrow them. But damaged people, broken people who refuse to heal, they need you beneath them. They need someone to look down on, just to feel tall. They need someone to control, just to feel powerful. They need someone to break, just to feel whole. That was never love. That was parasitism. That was survival at your expense. That was them using your light to cast their own shadow. But shadows can't exist without light. And the moment you walked away, the moment you took your light with you, they were left in complete darkness. No more reflection, no more definition, just empty, hollow, shapeless existence. And don't think for a second that they don't feel it. Don't think they're out there living their best life while you're here healing. No. They feel every bit of your absence. They feel it in the morning when there's no one to validate their existence. They feel it at night when the silence gets so loud it's deafening. They feel it in every new relationship that doesn't measure up, every new person who can't fill the void you left behind. They thought they could replace you. They thought you were disposable. They thought your love was common, ordinary, easily replicated. But now they know. Now they feel the weight of what they lost. And that weight, it's crushing them slowly, quietly, completely. You don't need revenge. You don't need to say a word. Your absence is doing all the work. Your growth is the punishment. Your peace is the violence they never saw coming. I know you still have moments. Moments where you question yourself, where you wonder if you did the right thing, where you almost reach for your phone to check on them. That's normal. That's the trauma bond, trying to pull you back. But don't you dare give in. Don't you dare take one step backward after how far you've come. You didn't survive all that pain just to go back to the source of it. You didn't crawl through hell just to set up camp there. You didn't wake up just to close your eyes again. Every day you stay away is a victory. Every moment you choose yourself is a rebellion. Every time you resist the urge to check on them, to respond to them, to explain yourself to them, you're proving that they no longer have power over you. And that right there, that's freedom. Let me tell you what's happening inside of you right now, even if you can't fully see it yet. You're transforming. You're shedding skin that was never yours to begin with. All those beliefs they planted in your head, all those lies they made you internalize, all those limitations they convinced you were real, they're falling away piece by piece. You're not the person they said you were. You're not weak. You're not crazy. You're not unlovable. You're not too much or too little or too anything. You're someone who loved with everything they had. You're someone who stayed when most would have left. You're someone who fought for a relationship that the other person was actively destroying. And that takes strength. That takes courage. That takes a kind of resilience that most people will never understand. You weren't weak. You were just loyal to the wrong people. But now your loyalty has shifted. Now it's pointed where it always should have been. At yourself. At your own healing. Your own growth, your own future. You're no longer pouring into empty vessels. You're no longer watering dead gardens hoping flowers will grow. You're finally investing in soil that can actually bear fruit. And that investment, it's going to pay off in ways you can't even imagine yet. The person you're becoming, the version of you that's emerging from this pain, they're not going to recognize them. They're going to see you and wonder how the hell you did it. How you went from broken to unbreakable. How you went from begging for love to demanding respect. How you went from their victim to their worst nightmare. Because that's what you are now. A nightmare to everyone who underestimated you. A haunting reminder of what happens when you push someone too far, when you take too much, when you assume someone will always be there no matter how badly you treat them. You're not the same person anymore, and you shouldn't want to be. That old version of you, the one who tolerated disrespect, who accepted crumbs, who believed love was supposed to hurt, they had to die. They had to be buried so this new version could rise. And rising you are, slowly maybe, painfully perhaps, but rising nonetheless. Every boundary you set is a brick in your new fortress. Every toxic person you cut off is a chain breaking. Every moment you spend alone, healing, growing, learning to love yourself, is a step toward the life you actually deserve. They needed you weak to feel strong. But now you've reclaimed your power. You've taken back everything they stole. And they've got nothing left. No more supply. No more victim. No more you. So what do they have now? Really think about it. What's left for them? They have to face themselves. They have to look in the mirror without you there to distract them from their own emptiness. They have to sit in the silence without your voice to fill it. They have to feel their own feelings without using yours as a shield. And that's terrifying for someone who's built their entire identity on controlling others. That's devastating for someone who's never developed a real sense of self. That's absolute destruction for someone whose only power came from keeping you powerless. They're exposed now. The mask has slipped, and everyone around them is starting to see what you saw all along. The manipulation, the selfishness, the complete inability to love anyone but themselves. It's all coming to the surface, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. You don't need to watch it happen. You don't need to be there for the collapse. Your job isn't to witness their destruction. Your job is to build your resurrection. Focus on you. Focus on healing those wounds they left behind. Focus on learning the lessons this pain has taught you. Focus on becoming so whole, so complete, so fulfilled that you never again mistake crumbs for a meal. The right people are coming. The ones who will love your strength instead of fearing it. The ones who will celebrate your growth instead of trying to stunt it. The ones who will add to your life instead of draining it. But they can't find you if you're still stuck in the wreckage of what was. Walk away, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with understanding. Understand that they were sick. Understand that hurt people hurt people. Understand that their treatment of you was never about your worth, but about their lack of it. And then keep walking. Don't look back. Don't reach back. Don't even think about going back. The door is closed. The chapter is finished. The story is moving on. They needed you weak to feel strong. But you're not weak anymore. You never really were. You were just asleep. And now that you're awake, now that you see clearly, now that you know your own power, there's nothing they can do to touch you. They've got nothing. And you've got everything. You've got your peace, your power, your future, your freedom. You've got you. Finally, completely, unapologetically. And that's more than enough. That's more than they ever deserved. That's more than they'll ever have. Remember this moment. Remember how it felt to finally break free. Remember the strength it took to walk away from something that was killing you slowly. Because one day, when you're standing in the fullness of your blessing, when you're surrounded by people who actually love you, when you're living a life you once only dreamed about, you're going to look back and thank yourself. Thank yourself for not giving up. Thank yourself for choosing pain over pretense. Thank yourself for betting on you when everyone else had counted you out. They needed you weak to feel strong. But now they've got nothing. And you've got everything that matters. Now go live like it.